Welcome. You are listening to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be here.
Lovely to have you again. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about the astrology of Halloween and or stroke Samhain.
Yes.
Samhain. I'm calling it Samhain. I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but apologies on that.
We'll agree that that's how we pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason we're talking about this now is because as the sun is moving through Scorpio, and when the sun actually reaches 15 degrees Scorpio, that is the point of when Halloween technically would be astrologically.
Yes.
But we all know that we celebrate Halloween on October the 31st.
Absolutely.
And then I think November.
Or the weekend that's closest to it.
Or the closest weekend to it. And
Yeah.
we've all got our fabulous outfits to wear and
Don't we ever?
all the rest of it and the trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you always celebrated Halloween here in Canada?
Yeah. I mean, and I grew up actually in the U.S. where my parents were divorced and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I grew up in the U.S. and from the earliest age of, gosh, how old was I when I first trick-or-treated? Probably 8, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, just a horde of neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
Kind of like the movie E.T. where they all like dress up and go roaming through the streets.
Yeah. And for our international listeners, can you say what trick-or-treating is?
Yes, it is when all the kids in the neighborhood dress up and with or without parents. Of course, I grew up in the 80s, so it was without parents a lot of the time, but usually one parent will be designated to sort of schlep the kids around.
Yeah.
And, they go from house to house and beg for candy, basically. And, if you're in the house, you either turn your lights off and pretend you're not home, or you are prepared with a whole bunch of candy that you dole out to the neighborhood kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to tell you that when growing up in South Africa, this was unheard of. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was only when we came to Canada in 2002 that Halloween even became a thing.
Mm.
We were staying in an apartment in Toronto, and I had the 4 kids at that stage, and the downstairs concierge said, all the kids in the neighborhood, no knocking on doors, come down to the lobby, and you can get your candy down there. So we went down, and the young girls all dressed up as, I don't know, Little Bo Peep and what have you.
Sure.
And this was our introduction to Halloween.
Yeah.
Never having kind of come across it before. So that was something.
Yeah. I mean, I loved Halloween. Like, I always loved dressing up, like, even not for Halloween. I mean, some of my favorite shows were like superhero shows like Wonder Woman when I was growing up, Big Bionic Woman. The Solid Gold Dancers were a big favorite. So, yeah, it was all about costumes and just being, having the chance to, for me as a little girl and an aspiring, fashionista, it was the chance to wear a full face of makeup and not have anybody tell me to take it off.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing is that because astrologically Halloween always occurs when the sun is in Scorpio, it leans into these Scorpion themes and symbols, like the spiders,
the witches,
the dead, the birth, death, and rebirth thing of people raising from their graves and what have you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. On a kind of unrelated note, but a hilarious note nonetheless. When I living in Vancouver, you notice people don't tend to dress up here for much compared to some other more kind of cosmopolitan your Torontos, your Montreals, your San Francisco, whatever. People here, we're known as the Lululemon capital, et cetera. It's all very outdoorsy. But the one thing that got everyone out that I remember was about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a zombie walk. And it took over all of downtown.
Good heavens.
It was just hordes and hordes of people dressed as zombies with blood and crazy special effects makeup. And you're like, how did you even, what?
Really?
Yeah, I could not believe. And the entirety of Robson Street, which is the busiest main, shopping district in all of downtown, was just mobbed with just thousands of zombies. It was insane. Yeah, so it just takes the right kind of dressing up, I guess, to get people here to.
I suppose so. I don't know if they call it cosplay or whatever, but
for sure.
The thing is, I think that we as humans are very interested in sex, death, and rebirth. These are default. You're paying attention to births, you're paying attention to deaths, and so on. And this business of the dead rising and Dracula and all of those kind of things.
Witches.
And, Exactly.
It's sexy witches, as the case may be.
Yes.
Sexy everything.
That's right. And it all comes to be celebrated at this point when the sun is at the 15 degrees Scorpio.
Totally.
Now, of course, that actually happens this year on November the 6th. But generally, of course, we celebrate Halloween on October the 31st.
Yeah.
But the point being, as astrologers, if you're paying attention to the wheel of the year and the cross-quarter days, and then this would be the one that we're paying attention to on November the 6th.
And let's define cross-quarter days, because I know about quarter days. That would be the summer solstices and the equinoxes.
Yes.
And then the cross-quarter days
are the ones in between. So they're 45 degrees from... So the quarter days are when the sun enters any of the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning of spring, summer, autumn, and winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. And then halfway between those quarter days, which divide the year into quarters, that's why they're called quarter days, halfway between each season, we have a cross-quarter day. Now, this always occurs at 15 degrees of the fixed signs.
Yeah.
So in spring, it will be at 15 Taurus. In summer, it's at 15 Leo. And the one we're talking about now is the Halloween / Samhain, which is 15 Scorpio. And then we have Imbolc at 15 Aquarius. So that is then in the winter cross-quarter day.
Yeah.
So it's a pagan festival that they measure to do with the sun's cycle, which I find very interesting, actually.
Yeah, totally.
That these are, and celebrations have gone back over the centuries of bonfires at these cross-quarter days for not only cleansing and getting rid of stuff that's not going to be used, and it's a way of cleansing through as well.
Yeah, for sure. And this is interesting. It's like, it's the opposite of the sort of March festival, which is really big in a lot of like European countries. And I remember when I was doing research for my Badass Goddesses calendar, there's this one, Marzana, who's a Baltic goddess of the spring. And they would, throw effigies of her into the river after setting them on fire. And this was like celebrating the spring thaw. So this is kind of the opposite of that, celebrating the hibernation and the beginning of like fall and winter coming in.
That's right, and being aware of people who have passed on, and in some cultures it's known as the Day of the Dead, where they celebrate the ancestors who came before us and who we managed to survive from, because apparently the odds of actually even making it as alive is millions to one.
Yeah,
and all our ancestors survived the Black Death and all of these things that went on prior.
Right,
and here we are.
Yeah. And what do we remember about that? Well, it's the sugar skull now. It's all,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, all this thing about digging up the bones and graveyards and tombstones, and it's all, even though it's, in a lot of ways, it's lightweight, there are some very dark, there's a load of movies like Halloween to start with, and all. I'm sure you've watched more of these than I have.
It's funny. There's one of these, it's an OkCupid thing of like, what are the 3 questions that are the most likely to create a love match between 2 people? And one of those 3 questions, I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head, but one of them is, do you like horror movies? Because that apparently, divides people more than almost any, other kind of question.
Do you like horror movies?
I really do.
Oh, no, I can't. No, absolutely. No, the last horror movie I watched was when I was 17 years old. I went with my brother down to the local cinema, and we were watching this movie called Burnt Offerings.
I remember that. I don't know if I've seen it, but I know.
Yeah, and once it started, I didn't realize what this was going to be, and I hung onto his arm, and I had my eyes closed through the whole movie. He refused to leave, and I was too scared to get out in the dark cinema and leave. I was only 17. He must have been 19 at the time. And I was hanging on through this whole wretched film, and I had nightmares afterwards.
Oh, no.
But he had bruises from his shoulder to his elbow where I had clung on, scared to death.
Wow.
So I found these quite disturbing, and they kept me awake for a long time.
Oh, no.
And even today, I can think back to that movie, and I'm thinking, no.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a lot of different types of horror movies, too. And, I mean, we talked about zombies and how, popular culture goes through
The Walking Dead,
Walking Dead, exactly. I mean, well, in the beginning, at least, it was a fantastic show, and then it kind of took a turn.
I couldn't possibly watch it.
I loved it at first. The first 6 seasons or so. Absolutely.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, my gosh. continues. Anyway, let's not go there. But I mean, there's science fiction horror. There's like supernatural horror.
And
there's
psychological's the worst.
And then there's like the devilish horror, and then there's like the medical horror, where it's like evil surgeons and
Coma.
Oh God, yeah, and the one with Jeremy Irons, where he's the two twin doctors.
No, Dr. Jekyll and
you're shaking your head. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, so many different types of horror movies. And one of the best that I've seen recently was actually a 2005 movie, but it was called The Descent. And it's about these girls who go hiking in these caves, and they find these like gross, like subterranean, like mutant humans who live down there, and they use clicking to like echolocate, and they're blind, and they're like all white and pale, and they skitter around and chase them and murder them. And yeah, it was really well done though. I like a well done horror movie. I don't just like a slasher movie. It's got to be like a compelling story and sort of unique, and not just like jump scares. And
so saying that you enjoy those things, would you say that Scorpio is strong in your chart then?
Oh, well, yeah, there's that.
There is this. You see what I'm saying? That it's an easy lean in for Scorpionic types of people,
that is true.
Whereas people perhaps with less Scorpio are not inclined to tap into this. I don't want to call it an aesthetic, but when there's, even at Walmart, when they've got spiders, you can buy, and I can't go down the aisle.
No. I mean, the fake ones, sure, that's fine. But if it's they have those real spiders or real scorpions in a little dome of glass. No! I went to it was actually like right around this time of year, a couple of years ago. It's a festival kind of fair thing, and they had art and all this stuff. And one of the display booths was all of these like terrible, like petrified, mummified little creatures, and one of them was like this. I'm just shivering full body thinking about it. It was like a centipede, and it was like almost a foot long in a glass case, and it was petrified. Like I can't even imagine. Like a horrible. Like why would anyone want to even look at that, much less have it in their house? It's so horrific. But at the same time, like cow skull, 100%. Like sign me up. I love that stuff. Like
True Blood.
Yeah, like oh my gosh, vampires. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting. It's an interesting side to this sign that actually comes through into the public domain, which they may not even be aware of at this time, and that's really why I wanted to talk about it. Yeah,
exactly.
Whereas when the sun is passing through other signs like Aries and Leo and this and that, we have the celebration and whatnot.
Yeah, or the sun's out for the first time. We can, actually wear shorts for the first time of the year. Go play frisbee, and that's Aries,
or bake bread at Lammas or something. At Yule, we're burning a log and celebrating the season and all the rest of it. However, at this particular one, it's a much more serious, edgy. It can definitely be tapping into a different side of the psyche when the sun goes through Scorpio.
And it's interesting. I know a lot of people in the sort of burlesque community and the performance community now, and they have these Halloween themed things. And it seems like there's a huge crossover between the burlesque community and like being interested in the occult and Halloween. And just obviously there's the costume aspect, but then there's also just the horror movie aspect and the kind of gruesome, like cool, like weird, creepy magicians and sorcerers and,
But I think even, to be honest, I think burlesque itself is a Scorpionic type.
Oh, for sure.
Dance, right? Yeah, if we have to do the dances of the signs, which we'll make a note of and do one day.
And it's a sneaky way of getting like sexuality and playfulness and all this stuff in kind of under the radar. It's like, oh, you're making a joke of it. Therefore, it's cool to like shake your stuff and do whatever.
Exactly. And that's tapping into really the sex side of it. Whereas the Halloween is tapping into the death and then the rebirth. If we get it right,
everybody and everything dies, and if you can't make fun of it, or somehow
it's the human. Freud spoke about this a lot, right?
For sure.
That these are the things that we are worried about, and dreams about. So you have these dreams of this as well.
Mr. Scorpio rising himself,
Yes. Well, this is it.
And I mean, like Scorpio, exactly. I mean, there's so many Scorpios that I could mention, exactly.
Dracula and the whole lot. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is, right there.
Yeah.
It's lightweight, but it's still tapping into both the death and the sex and the rebirth of that guy that
Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah, in Rocky Horror Picture, totally.
Yeah, and they gave birth to this monster, basically, and it was the same with Dracula.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. So
the Frankenstein was the very first horror novel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you were saying about trick-or-treating, because Obviously, as adults, we can't really, do that so much. You can't just go to the pub crawl and ask for free drinks, as the case may be.
Yes.
You can, but you probably won't get it. But one of the things that's come up, in the last probably 10 years that I've really noticed a lot of is like, okay, there's zombie walks. There's also like these real life escape room games, or like inner city kind of like escape, like a treasure hunt thing, where you actually run through the city and you have to solve puzzles and stuff like that. And frequently they are in the fall to winter. It's, more of like not because it's not dark, early enough. Right. Mm-hmm. So, as soon as it starts to get dark early enough, then you can have like maybe starting at 8 or 9 o'clock after the sun's gone down, and you do these kind of things where you and a bunch of friends will like go around and solve mysteries, and everyone has their phone. And sometimes it's like, but there's a pandemic. Well, I mean, this is before the actual pandemic,
yes.
But like, a more scary outbreak, like Ebola type one, where it's like fast moving or whatever, or they're actually zombies chasing you, or like weird, like men in like hazmat suits are chasing after people, and you have to like solve like puzzles. And this is a really sort of Scorpionic thing too.
Yes.
These sort of live action things where you're like, you get your heart racing and you're running from things and you're having to solve stuff. And
it's life and death.
Right. And
life and
it's
death.
Like the adult version of holding up and watching horror movies all night like you would do as a teenager, or trick-or-treating. Right. And it's like, the adult version of that kind of scary thing. We did something like this a couple of years ago. It was corn maze.
Yes.
That was hilarious. It was, the work they put into it was insane. There was a corn maze, and then there was like a wheat maze or something, some other kind of field. I don't know, crops, but anyway. And then there was another one that was through all these different sheds and stuff where they had spray painted everything and, glow in the dark paint. And there was one where you walk into this building and they've got this walkway that moves as you step on it. And so it looks like the whole building is like moving and shaking around you, but it's actually just the thing is the walkway is like being shaken by these. It was just a bunch of like people in clown masks and stuff. But all these kids in their teens and 20s are getting paid whatever to. Yeah. There was thousands of them. Yeah. It was crazy. And it was so busy. Like it was sold out months ahead of time. Yeah. And, we just walked through the whole thing. A couple of my friends were just like, nope, don't like to be scared. Can't do it. And I'm like, really? It sounds like so much fun. No. And they're like, nope. No. Tell me about it later.
No. I was reading a thing earlier this year, and they were saying that the farmers plant those corn mazes ahead of time, clearly, because they have to. And they actually make more money from the corn maze that week that they have it there than they do from their crop.
I believe it.
Because it becomes so popular to do this. Yeah. And this also hooks into the thing that Scorpio is the third harvest, right? Yeah. The first harvest is Virgo. Your middle harvest, second harvest is Libra, where everything's fruity and juicy. In Virgo, it's a bit tart still, fruit and juicy in Libra. And then it's the final, take it now. Yeah. It's now or never, because it's Scorpio. You're either going to take the apple off the tree, or it's just going to go wrong.
Pumpkins, your root vegetables, your things you can make soups out of, the stuff that you might freeze over the winter and
it's
eat it.
It's the final harvest. Yeah. It's not that fresh, juicy, or the sweet. It's we're into the final core stuff here now. Yeah. So that's also known as the third harvest. And that's why apparently the corns they leave it right to the end to leave that maze there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Totally interesting.
So if we look at the astrology chart for the 2023 Halloween date, what we have is we've got the sun is conjoined Mars, and it's very close to Mercury as well. So there's going to be a lot of activity that night. Both the sun and Mars are opposing Uranus. So it's unexpected things will probably happen if you're out trick-or-treating or you're going to a party or something like that. And there really won't be very much moon. It's actually a third quarter moon. So there is some moonlight, but it will only be risen later. So the early evening when the kids are out just after sunset will still be quite dark. So it's going to be, I would imagine, quite a powerfully impacted evening. If that's what you're looking for, you're definitely going to get that this particular Halloween.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's not forget that the co-ruler of the modern ruler, as they say, of Scorpio is Pluto. And in this chart, we've got Pluto in the second to, it's at 28 degrees of Capricorn. So it's really just in the final degrees of Capricorn before it goes into Aquarius, in that what we've talked about, where it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years.
Yes.
So it's just in the very late stages of Capricorn now. And it's what is Pluto about? I mean, it's about things that it's about rebirth and destruction and transformation and about how, as I was jokingly saying, things you bury don't stay dead.
Yes, it's true.
But in a good way as well. It's about you have to have destruction in order for creation, and all that. You need dark for light. And to quote Tim Curry at the end of Labyrinth, or not Labyrinth, but my other favorite one from back then, Legend. Yeah, I mean, you need the darkness to have the light. And this is just the beginning of the dark season, but you plant seeds and they grow and flourish when the light comes back.
That's right.
And squirrels plant their nuts and then they dig them up in the spring.
That's right. And if you were a gardener, you would be doing your autumn planting now, which means you would particularly be taking bulbs such as tulips and crocuses and what have you. You would have ordered them already and they would have been delivered. And you want to be planting them at this point when the sun is at 15, because then it's not the ground is not frozen yet. It's not too cold, and it's a good time to plant these bulbs in the earth. And of course, the bulb, you plant it twice as deep as how fat it is, and then it will come up again in the spring. So the point here is that the bulb needs to spend that time buried in the darkness, that sort of 2/3 of the year, 1/3 of the year, before it can come up in the spring. Whereas if you just leave your bulbs lying around on a shelf, they're not necessarily going to produce as beautiful a flower. That's why they actually plant them, they overwinter them.
Interesting.
Planted below. And of course, here in Canada, the ground will freeze.
Yeah.
But that seems to have something to do with it. And some seeds themselves need to be frozen to actually germinate in the spring. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, also, just going back 5,000 years, when they opened the pyramids, they found seeds and bulbs that had been put in the tombs, and they were still viable. They had been buried in these tombs, which are celebrations of the dead, and they are still viable, and they've got them to grow and replicate,
Oh, that's amazing.
Not replicate, continue to grow. Germinate and grow, yes.
Wow.
So it's interesting that even things that are buried can still come back to life, like a phoenix, which is very frequently the symbol for...
mummy.
Or the mummy. Oh! You're determined to scare me. Yeah. Okay, so we've really had quite a bit of a look at the astrology of Halloween. So I'm just wondering, Arwynne, what are you planning for your costume for Halloween this year?
Well, this year I've actually done a burlesque performance in October, and I'm probably just going to recycle the costume because it was just epic and perfect for Halloween. It's we were a chorus line of pinup bat girls. So we had these wonderful satin bat wings that were created by Melody Mangler, our choreographer. And shout out to Melody Mangler. And just a wonderful, like...
Is it black or what?
Yeah, black lacy mask, black, like...
Scorpio.
Like satin
Scorpio.
Black bat wings.
Scorpio.
Yeah, exactly. Fishnets and the whole nine
Fishnets.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Yeah, kind of like flappers, but a sexy Batgirl version.
Oh my God! Maybe we can. We'll put an image on the webpage though. Cool. So if you finish listening to the podcast, you can click through the webpage and see a picture of Arwynne in her Batgirl Halloween as the sun reaches 15 degrees Scorpio. Yeah. This is what we're wearing.
This is what's the thing to wear. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I feel quite tame because I have an Alice band with some cat ears in lace.
Excellent.
And I will be wearing that.
Perfect.
That is my costume. It's about as far as I go.
Cats and bats. I love it.
Cats and bats. Yeah. Great. Okay, Arwynne, this has been great having you over again and chatting about the astrology of Halloween as the sun gets to be 15 degrees Scorpio.
Absolutely.
Some of these symbols and themes for this. And we'll look at some of the other cross-quarter days as they come up later on in the year. Thank you so much for joining us again this time.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.